The Autobiography of Mr. Spock, The Life of a Federation Legend, by Spock, a Vulcan, edited by Una McCormack. Dedicated to everyone who has written in the Star Trek Extended Universe, and particularly to the memory of Vonda and McIntyre. Point of entry, 2387, Shikar, Vulcan. It has long been my custom, before embarking upon a great voyage, to set my affairs in order. I am motivated, in part, by a desire to make this as straightforward and painless as possible for the executors of my will. But the practice is also, perhaps substantially, for my own benefit, providing an opportunity to reflect upon what has gone before. Nevertheless, although I began writing the story of my life once before, this was never completed. And I find that I contemplate resuming work on this with some trepidation. To revisit years and people long gone, to reflect upon what has been learned. Who among us, even the most ascetic, after a long life filled with incidents, would not find this task a challenge? Still, I leave very soon upon an uncertain mission, and I cannot leave this book unwritten. If I were writing for a Vulcan reader, I would not need, I think, to explain the nature and the purpose of such a volume. And while I know you in particular, my reader, are a person not only of information, but also of knowledge and wisdom, I must not assume that this tradition and ritual are known to you. What you hold in your hands is the product of a continuing series of rituals performed by Vulcans in old age. I will spare you the details of the rest. I suspect you can easily imagine the many and intricate meditations that I have performed in recent years, with varying degrees of self-denial. But this one I shall explain to you in more depth. The book you are holding is called the Tsan Alat, which translates, I give a rough translation here, certain nuances are necessarily lost, a wisdom book. It is the physical manifestation of the lifelong practice of Tsan Sat, the intellectual deconstruction of emotional patterns in which every Vulcan engages in order to turn impulse into considered action. We are often considered a cerebral culture, my friend, but we are wise enough to know that our minds are embodied and take physical form. It is with this knowledge that the wisdom book is best understood. The summation of an individual's life and experiences gathered together in one place to pass on to whomever comes afterwards. Allow me to explain in a little more detail the form that the wisdom book takes. I should note before giving this overview that my version will, by necessity, stray from tradition in significant ways. I am not, after all, entirely Vulcan. But were you to examine the many volumes held in the vast echoing undercrofts of the many archives dotted through our cities, a man such as you would quickly identify the standard form, that Tsan Atlat guides us through the 3 ages of a Vulcan life. First, we have Rolfori, or the acquisition of information. That period of youth when the mind is most nimble and can seemingly learn an almost limitless number of facts. After that comes the Faituk, the height of one's life when this bedrock of information is operationalized as practical knowledge of the world, where we begin to see the patterns of life and can draw upon what has happened before each new challenge and dilemma. Last of all comes Kau, the stage of life when our experiences become as rich as a tapestry wrought by the finest weavers of T'Pol, and the luckiest of us acquire a kind of wisdom, or at least continue to hold out the hope that wisdom might yet be acquired. Such a structure of life's journey is not particular to Vulcan, of course. There are many similar ideas on Earth. Of course, as I do not need to tell you, I am sure that you are already thinking of Shakespeare's 7 Ages of Man, or the idea of the late style that emerges in writers beyond their 100th year. I mentioned such things to evidence as early as possible in this text that my human education has not been lacking. But my questionable half-humanity would soon become clear to any entirely Vulcan reader of this book. This is because I have deviated significantly from what one would expect to find in the Tsan Atlat. Each section of a traditional wisdom book documents meticulously a situation in an individual's life in which some dilemma or crisis or peril has been resolved through the application of logic. Logic must, after all, prevail. The intention is that by examining such situations, the reader steadily acquires a bank of wisdom upon which they may draw in their own life. In my time at the Learning Domes, I read over 2,000 examples of the San Atlat, my friend, and while I did learn a great deal from them, not once did I find an example that reflected back my own hybridity. I have therefore broken substantially with this form. Much of what I learned in the course of my long life has come through my encounters with others. My San Atlat reflects this. The individual sections of my San Atlat contain reflections upon the most significant people in my life. A true San Atlat would scorn such an approach as subjective and therefore worthless. I leave you, and any other reader to whom you choose to give this book to, decide. You will see, therefore, that each section bears the name of someone whom I loved. On one occasion, I have used the word enterprise. I note here that I might well have used the word family. I believe that you, my friend of all people, will understand. Let me turn to you now. Any book must, after all, consider to whom it is addressed. The traditional San Atlat is most usually addressed to children, grandchildren, or great-grandchildren. I have no direct blood descendants, no child or grandchild or great-grandchild to remember me fondly or respectfully. Posterity is another audience, of course, and while I am prepared to admit that many of my actions have had significance, or that at least I have been lucky to play a part in great events and changes, it is not within my nature to address the world so publicly. I have chosen you, my friend, not least because I trust your judgment as to whether there is wider value in the experiences I have documented here. You will know what should or should not be shared more generally, and when we reach those parts of my life when secrecy has hitherto been necessary, I will alert you, and trust to your decision as to what should be kept secret, and what now can be revealed. But if there are, if you will forgive me, other reasons for choosing you as my audience, my inheritor, you surely will understand the nature of the mission upon which I shall be embarking in the next few days. You surely better than most understand the draw of Romulus, and the Romulan people, and the desire to bring succor. I believe I do not have to explain myself here to you, of all people, who sacrificed everything for this cause. But I also give this book to you, Jean-Luc, because I hope you might benefit personally from what I have written. The twists and turns of history I have, I think, dealt you some hard blows in recent years. Ones that are not just reward for the man that you are and the work that you have done. If anything in this book resonates with you, then by this alone, the writing will have been justified. If this book shows you a path forward, then I will have done more than I dared hope. 2 years ago, after your resignation, you invited me to visit you in Le Bar. It is, and will be, one of my greatest regrets in my life that I never had the chance to take you up on this kind offer. As the great friends of my early life moved on or passed away, the opportunity to cultivate new friendships has been a most treasured aspect of this, my later life. To you, then, Jean-Luc Picard, my friend, I give the book of my wisdom, such as it is, and I leave it to you and your own considerable reserves of wisdom to judge its value, and to decide what to do with whatever value it contains. I do not believe that I shall be here to see what you decide. I am setting out on another mission. One last voyage. In a long life filled with many strange and wonderful journeys, I hope that when you learn of my intentions, you will understand. I hope that you will read with interest and compassion. That surely is what we all, in the end, most desire.